started like any other quiet evening in the small town of Millfield, a place where everyone thought they knew everyone. The kind of town where doors were left unlocked and secrets never stayed buried for long. Until one night, something happened that shattered that illusion forever. It wasn't just a murder, it was a story so dark, so tangled, that even the detectives who worked the case couldn't sleep for weeks after it was over. It all began on the night of October 14th, 2012. At exactly 2:17 a.m., a panicked 911 call came in from a trembling voice, female, mid-20s, crying uncontrollably. "There's blood everywhere," she said. "He's not breathing." The dispatcher tried to calm her down, to get a name, an address, but all she could say was, "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." When officers arrived just 7 minutes later, the house was silent. The front door was unlocked. Inside, they found the body of a man mid-30s, lying face down in the living room, his hands tied behind his back with what looked like silk ribbon. The victim's name was Daniel Mercer, a local photographer known for his charming personality and the way he seemed to make friends everywhere he went. But behind that easy smile, there were whispers. People said Daniel had a habit of getting too close to his subjects, especially the women. Some said he crossed lines, others said it was all rumor. But that night, all the gossip turned into evidence. In the kitchen, detectives found shattered glass, a broken phone, and blood smeared across the fridge. It looked like there had been a struggle. But oddly, nothing in the house was stolen. No sign of forced entry, no missing valuables. Whoever had done this knew Daniel. They had been let in. The only other person in the house was the caller, Lena Hart, a 26-year-old art student and Daniel's on-and-off girlfriend. She was found sitting on the kitchen floor, her hands shaking, her clothes stained with blood. But not all of it was his. When the paramedics tried to help her, she kept whispering one thing. "He said he forgave me." Detectives quickly realized this wasn't a simple case of passion or self-defense. There was something ritualistic about the way Daniel's body was positioned, his head tilted to the side, his eyes open, a small photograph placed neatly on his chest. It was a picture of him and Lena, smiling, taken just 2 weeks before his death. On the back of the photo, written in red ink, were the words, "Do you still love me?" Lena's story changed several times during questioning. First, she claimed they'd been attacked by an intruder. Then she said Daniel had tried to hurt her, and she fought back. But the physical evidence didn't support either version. There were no signs of an intruder, and Daniel's injuries showed he'd been restrained long before he died. The only fingerprints on the ribbons were hers. When detectives checked her phone, they found something even more disturbing. Dozens of unsent text messages to Daniel written over the course of several nights. Long, emotional paragraphs that swung between love and anger. "You don't see what you do to me," one read. "You make me feel invisible." Another said, "If I can't make you feel something, maybe I should stop trying." But one message, never sent, chilled them the most. "Tomorrow you'll finally listen." What no one knew then was that Lena had been keeping a secret diary. One she started the night she met Daniel at a photography exhibition. The journal, found hidden under her mattress days later, was filled with fragmented thoughts, sketches, and details about their relationship. But toward the end, the tone shifted. The entries became erratic, obsessed. She wrote about hearing voices in her dreams, about Daniel standing over her bed, about the fear that he was watching her even when he wasn't there. When the forensic team processed the scene, they discovered something small but crucial, a recorder hidden behind a bookshelf. It had captured the final 20 minutes of Daniel's life. The audio was muffled, but enough could be heard to piece together what happened. You could hear Lena's voice trembling, asking Daniel if he still loved her. He tries to calm her, tells her to put the knife down, then a crash, followed by silence. But the most haunting part came at the end. You can hear Lena whisper, almost gently, "Now you'll never leave me again." The evidence seemed undeniable, but the investigation took an unexpected turn when Lena's lawyer produced medical records showing she had been under psychiatric treatment for several years. Diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and dissociative episodes, she had been prescribed medication but reportedly stopped taking it months before Daniel's death. Her defense argued that she wasn't in control of her actions that night, that she had slipped into a state of psychosis triggered by emotional trauma. The prosecutors, however, painted a different picture. They said this wasn't madness, it was manipulation. That Lena knew exactly what she was doing. They pointed to her internet searches. How long does it take to die from blood loss? What happens when you tie someone too tight? How to erase fingerprints from ribbon? Cold, calculated, and deliberate. The trial divided the town. Some saw Lena as a monster, others as a broken woman failed by the system. Every detail that came out made the story darker. The jury listened to the recording, the diary entries, the forensic reports. But the question wasn't just what happened. It was why. Why would a woman who claimed to love him so deeply commit such an act? The answer came from a final piece of evidence no one expected. A message left in Daniel's camera. Investigators found his digital camera in a drawer, its memory card intact. The last video clip, time-stamped just hours before his death, showed Daniel recording himself, his tone tired, defeated. "If anything happens to me," he said, "please understand, I tried to help her, but she doesn't want help. She wants control." When that video was played in court, you could feel the air leave the room. Even Lena looked confused, like she didn't remember any of it. Her expression flickered between shock and guilt, as if she was watching someone else's life play out. After weeks of testimony, the verdict finally came. The jury found Lena Hart guilty of second-degree murder, citing diminished responsibility due to mental illness. She was sentenced to 25 years in a psychiatric facility instead of a traditional prison. But even that didn't bring peace to the Mercer family, or the town. Because what happened next made everything even stranger. A year after the trial, Daniel's younger sister, Emma, started receiving anonymous letters in the mail. Each one contained a photograph, pictures that Daniel had taken, but altered. His face had been scratched out, replaced with red ink hearts, and at the bottom of each picture, a message. "He's still watching." The address on Lila's hand-drawn map led detectives to a faded, single-story storage building on the outskirts of town. No windows, no activity, no signs of recent use. The kind of place people drive past their whole lives without noticing. But the lock on the door was new. Too new. The metal still shined like it had just been installed. When investigators cut through it and stepped inside, they found a small, empty room. Nothing but concrete, dust, and an old metal chair in the center. But on the far wall, the light from their flashlights caught something faint, thin scratches, carved directly into the cement. Not words, not drawings. Tally marks. Dozens of them, uneven, desperate. Some carved so hard, the concrete had chipped away. Someone had been inside this room before, many times, and they had counted every moment of it. But the real horror wasn't the tallies. It was the box. In the corner, buried under a thin layer of dust, lay a small wooden crate. No label, no markings. Inside, wrapped neatly in cloth, was a collection of personal items. An old watch, a ring, a folded photograph, a dried-up keychain. Each one belonged to a different missing persons case from the last 5 years. Cases that had no connection to each other, no common pattern, no suspect. Until now, every single item had a date carved into it. The earliest was 4 years ago. The most recent was 3 weeks before Lila died. This wasn't a random storage unit. This was a trophy room. The discovery changed everything. Lila wasn't the first victim. She was simply the first one found. The case instantly shifted from a brutal homicide to a serial predator investigation. But there was still the biggest missing piece of all. What connected Ethan to any of this? Detectives confronted him again, pressing harder this time. And finally, Ethan revealed something he had hidden. Not out of guilt, but fear. Months earlier, he'd been receiving anonymous letters. Short, strange messages written in block handwriting. No threats, no demands, just chilling lines like "I remember, and you should have known." He threw them away, thinking it was some disturbed prank. The last letter arrived 2 weeks before Lila's death. It said, "I found you." When investigators compared the paper from the letter to the piece found in Lila's car, the fibers matched. Same notebook, same tear pattern. But the handwriting didn't match hers. Someone else had written it. Someone who wanted Lila to follow Ethan. Someone who needed her involved. Someone using both of them as pieces in a much larger, darker puzzle. And then the case took another horrifying turn. Security footage from a gas station near the storage unit revealed a hooded figure visiting the property at nearly the same time. Lila had drawn her map. The clip was grainy, the lights dim, but a single detail stood out on the person's wrist. Was a bracelet, identical to the one found in the trophy box. Detectives enhanced the footage frame by frame, and when the face finally came into view, every assumption in the case shattered. It wasn't Ethan. It wasn't anyone Lila knew. It wasn't even a name on any criminal database. It was someone completely unexpected. A woman, early 30s, sharp features, focused eyes, moving with a calmness that felt unnervingly calculated. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look rushed. She looked like someone checking on property she owned. Someone confident no one would ever find out what she had done. Investigators began digging through rental records, credit card trails, anything that could link her to the storage building. For 2 days, they hit nothing. Not a single lead. It was as if she didn't exist. But the breakthrough came when a detective recognized the bracelet. It had been part of a limited local craft fair years earlier. Only 30 were ever made, each sold to a different customer. They tracked down the seller. And finally, a name emerged. Eva Merrill. No criminal record, no history of violence, no red flags. A former art student who disappeared from public life years earlier. According to the seller, Eva didn't talk much, but she had been intensely drawn to anything symbolic. Pendants, shapes, items that held personal meaning. Just like the pendant left beside Lila. When police searched Ava's last registered residence, they found it abandoned. But in the back room, behind a loose panel in the wall, they found a hidden compartment. Inside were more sketches. Hundreds of them. Faces, symbols, locations. Some crossed out, some circled. One of the circled drawings was Ethan's face. But here was the detail that made investigators freeze. Next to Ethan's drawing was another sketch of Lila, drawn months before the crime. Ava had been watching both of them, following them, studying them, as if they were characters in a story she was writing. And based on the timeline, she had been planning this for almost a full year. But why them? Why these two strangers? The answer came in the most unexpected way. Forensic technicians discovered old newspaper clippings taped to the inside of a cabinet. Articles about a car accident from 10 years earlier. A crash that had taken the life of a young woman named Rowan Merrill, Ava's sister. The other driver survived without charges. The case was ruled accidental. That driver's name? Ethan Rowe. He never knew the woman he hit. He never even saw her face. It was dark, raining, sudden. It destroyed him for years. But he moved forward, trying to rebuild his life piece by piece. Ava never moved forward. She turned her grief into obsession, then obsession into violence. Her victims weren't random. Every single one had been connected in some distant way to the crash. Witnesses, investigators, paramedics, tow drivers. Anyone who had touched the case or failed, in Ava's mind, to deliver justice. Lila was the final piece. She had been the first person on the scene during the crash that night. A young passerby who had called for help. To Ava, she was part of the world that allowed Ethan to walk free. So Ava manipulated her, followed her, pushed her, and eventually led her directly to Ethan's doorstep, turning the two into unwilling participants in her twisted narrative. But Ava didn't expect investigators to break the case this fast. And 3 days after her name surfaced, she vanished. Her phone was left behind, her car abandoned. Her last confirmed sighting was a bus station camera, where she boarded a bus headed north. After that, nothing. She disappeared the same way she lived, quietly, calmly, deliberately. The case remains open to this day. Ethan moved away. Lila's family still fights for answers. The trophy box remains in police storage, a reminder of the lives Ava took on her path of revenge. And somewhere out there, a woman with a calm smile and a silver pendant may still be watching the world that she believes wronged her. Because people like Ava don't stop. They wait, they plan, they return when you least expect them. And that is why this murder didn't just disturb investigators. It changed the way they look at every case that crosses their desks, because they learned something chilling. The most terrifying killers aren't the ones who rage without control, but the ones who hurt with purpose, precision, and patience. The ones you never see coming. The ones who believe they're right. The ones who have all the time in the world.